Morning. If you could turn to Philippians chapter 4. One of the greatest encouragements in the Bible is, we're all familiar with it. Philippians chapter 4, verse 13. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. Pretty sure most of us are familiar with that. I kind of picture that as it doesn't mean that God's going to make everything easy, but he'll give us enough to get through it. So I kind of picture it like if somebody tells me to bench press 300 pounds, I'd be so discouraged because I know it's impossible. But if some weightlifter comes and tells me, okay, I'm going to help you bench press 300 pounds, like push it up as hard as you can, and if you get stuck, I'll help lift up as much as you need. Then I'll be like, I know this is not going to be easy, but at least he'll be there to pull it up. Like you picture a bench press. Like when I was working out with some friends a long time ago, I'd push up real hard. We tried to bench press as much weight as we could, like 3 times. And then on the last one, we usually get stuck right in the middle and they'd kind of tap up on it. And it was so hard and we'd be so sore afterwards. But we did it. We felt like, we bench pressed however much weight it was. And we felt like we accomplished something with just a bit of help there. And I kind of picture it like that. God, he says, I'm going to help you. I'm going to strengthen you to get through it. I'm not going to make it easy, but I'll strengthen you. So that's the way life is, I think. It's not going to be easy, but he's going to give us strength to get through, faithful, being able to have what we need to get through. And he wants us to be strong. He doesn't want a bunch of weaklings fighting Satan. He wants us to be strong warriors. And so I've always been encouraged by that. And I believe this verse, he says, I can do all things through him who gives me strength. But I believe that Paul actually had something specific in mind when he wrote this. What did Paul have specifically in mind when he said, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me? If you read the verses before it, I think that tells us what the answer is. We read from verse 11, Paul says, not that I speak from want, for I've learned to be content in whatever circumstances I am in. I know how to get along with humble means, and I also know how to live in prosperity. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of being filled and going hungry, both of having an abundance and of suffering need. Then he says, I can do all things through him who gives me strength. And to me, this tells me specifically what Paul had grabbed that hold of that truth for. I can do all things through him who gives me strength. He said, I can be content in any circumstance. That's why God's strengthening me. So I can live, I can rejoice in the Lord, I can be content, I can have, I can be rich inwardly in my spirit because he strengthens me no matter what circumstance. And so I think when he says, I can do all things through him who strengthens me, when Paul wrote it, he wasn't saying, I can go preach the gospel to thousands of people, I can do all these outward things. He was saying, the main thing he's saying, God's going to strengthen me so I can weather any circumstance. I can be I can be faithful to God no matter what comes at me, whether we all have good days and bad days. Paul had more bad days than good days, I think. But he was able to say, God strengthens me so I can have a good day every day and be content. And I was talking with Brother David last night when we were driving, and we were talking about how unfaithful Israel was, because whenever they'd go into suffering and persecution, they'd be faithful to God. They would seek God's face. They would pray. They'd be so outwardly they'd have a rough time, but inwardly they'd be attached to their Father, God. But then when they entered times of ease and prosperity, they fell every time. They fell into worshiping idols and going off and ease and pleasure and play and just living for themselves, and they fell away from God. And so Paul right here, he's saying we don't have to be like Israel. In all things God gives me strength to be faithful, even in times of prosperity now. Whether we're having good day or in the bad days, it's easy to seek God. In the good days, it's easy to forget about him. But Paul's saying, even in the good days, I can still be faithful to God and not lose him. And so Paul was relying on God's strength to be content. And he was, I was thinking about Paul. He was ministered to thousands of people, and he had so many bad days, and I was thinking he could have blamed other people for not helping him. All the people that he ministered to let him get stoned. Like sometimes they would try to protect him, I guess, but other times nobody was there with him. People leaving him, people despising him. Like, he loved people and he poured himself out, but people despised him. Sometimes he'd go hungry. Why didn't they give him more? Why couldn't they? Sometimes they just didn't have it. Like right here in verse 10, it says the Philippians, they just couldn't help him because they were poor. But that didn't disturb whether we can have a good day or a bad day, whether we're faithful to God or not. It doesn't depend on any other people, and so only God's strength. And so I saw that in Paul's life, that he's like, no matter, even if there's nobody there to support me or to help me, God's going to strengthen me to get through this day faithful. And and that's the encouragement for me, that I don't have to rely on anybody or any circumstance to get through the day rejoicing in the Lord and happy in Him. I can get through the day because He's going to give me strength and help me right when I need it.